Okay, so we're going to wait for Ann to jump on. Hey, everybody. Hope you had a great week. Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry.
You have there's a shadow somewhere here.
Hey, I need to get my light on.
Oh, there you
Does
go.
that help?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. Still kind of dark. Perfectionism.
We're talking about
We
perfection.
need this
Oh, you
perfect.
just can't help
Come
yourself,
on.
can you?
Come on. Oh gosh, what a day. What a day. Welcome everybody. And yeah. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, we're talking about perfectionism, and Barb started off great by trying to perfect my lighting on my video.
Hey, we want to see your beautiful face. You're in the dark, girl. You're in the dark.
So I don't know what to do.
You're fine.
But
it's better now.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about perfectionism and performance and what it truly is to be our authentic self. And let's face it, the only book that we have to live by to learn how to get out of perfectionism and performance is the Word of God, because we're not taught this any other way. And most of us come from that background that teaches us performance and perfectionism. Yes. So I did something before we started this live. I looked up the definition of perfectionism, Barb.
Good.
And it is literally a disposition to regard anything short of perfection as unacceptable. So what it's saying is, if you are not completely perfect, you are unacceptable. That is what perfectionism is. And I believe that perfectionism provokes performance.
Amen.
It makes us perform.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of brings me to some reasons why people would possibly want to perform and operate in perfectionism. Why would they want to do it? And the first thing I thought of is, and I'm going to bring up these points, and then Barb, I'll ask you to kind of give your thoughts on it, okay? So one thing I thought of is, what if it's a fear of failure? I can see where perfectionists, they will literally diminish their personal worth and value if they fail in something. All of a sudden, they are less than because they failed. And in James 1:2-5, it literally says, count it all joy when you encounter various I got my thing in the way, various trials, knowing that patience has its perfect worth. And so a perfectionist that thinks they have to be perfect and that they have failed if they're not perfect, they're forgetting that there's actually joy found in having various trials.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have to say about that? A fear of failure, Barb. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a fear of rejection. Like, I won't be loved and I won't be enough. Like, I mean, the enemy plants those things in our mind anyway. Are you really enough? Do people really? So it's just, it's like, as a child, I could hear my parents go, "Oh, she's such a good girl." They'd be talking to their friends, like when I was weeding, because I would weed the garden or something. "Oh, she's such a good girl." Well, I wanted more of that. I wanted to be that good girl. And I had to keep it up. And I felt like somehow, in my little mind, they wouldn't love me. They wouldn't value me if I wasn't doing those things. So it carried on in adulthood. Yeah. I mean, it's exhausting. Just the thought of it makes me feel exhausted.
So why is it exhausting? Why is it exhausting?
Okay, this is what I tell a friend of mine who is very much a perfectionist. I'm like, perfection does not exist. I mean, we cannot be perfect. So if you're constantly trying to do something that is completely impossible, you are going to be frustrated all the time, which is exhausting. And then it becomes, you become angry and, all these anxious, stressful. And that person I was talking to said, fruits of the spirit. I said, yeah, not the spirit we want to follow, but definitely a fruit of a spirit, right?
Wow.
Um, so it's, yeah. And some people, look at being, yeah, there's a difference between perfectionism and excellence. Okay. Excellence I strive for, and I believe God wants us to be excellent at the things we do. That means it's the best that we can make it, the best that we can do. And we know in our mind, in that process of excellence, there's failing, and it's okay because that's where we learn, right? We're learning as we fail, and fail is like a four-letter word to a lot of people. Like, that's a horrible thing. So if you are afraid to fail because of, thoughts of perfectionism, you are really going to just be minimized to a very empty life, right? A very empty life without, you're never going to excel. You're going to stay stuck and you're going to be frustrated because of that. But if you have to be perfect, who's going to try to do anything? Because you're probably never going to pull it off.
That's
right?
exactly right. So someone on our group or our page just said, so do you think some people use it to control the next person? Absolutely, 100%. That's called narcissism, and we'll cover that later.
That's another.
But but absolutely, if a person does not believe in themselves and they think they have to be perfect, they will expect everyone around them to be perfect so that they can feel better.
Right.
And so
right.
it is, not only is it absolutely unattainable, and it is a unfulfilled expectation, and it's impossible to do it, but it's impossible to create puppets around you too that can perform effectively.
Yes. And again, another level of frustration, because, even in our marriages, it's hard enough when we want to change something about ourselves, right? And we're given everything we got and we want to change, and then we think how silly it is to try to change another person because they not only have to want to, I mean, we can't do that. But if we want everyone to be perfect around us, including like our children, whatever, because they reflect on us, are we the perfect parent, right? So that goes into the way we raise our children.
Yeah.
And we're constantly be overwhelmed, frustrated, anxious because they are not getting it right 1, 2, 3 all the time.
That is exactly right. That's exactly right. So brings us to our next reason why somebody would possibly be a perfectionist, and that would be the fear of disapproval.
Yeah.
So if you let others see your flaws, perfectionists will often fear that they will no longer be accepted if people see their flaws. So trying to be perfect is a way that they protect themselves from criticism and rejection and disapproval.
Right. And you know what? I had that, thinking back as a child, it can transfer into a lot of different forms. When I was a kid, I was chubby in elementary school. I didn't know that. I mean, I never thought about it until I was in 6th grade and boys started liking girls and girls started liking boys, and somebody made a comment. And I'm like, oh, gosh, maybe. And then I started looking at myself, right? Really critical, like maybe I am a little chubby. And I'm like, well, forget that. So I remember like my dad would always give me money, for my lunch money. So I stopped spending my lunch money and I just wouldn't eat lunch at school. And I started losing weight. So when I showed up in 7th grade, people were like, who's that? Who's that? And I got immediate approval, and then all of a sudden I went from this group to this group and now as a popular kid. So to me, that was like, okay, I have got to create this perfect thing so I never hear those words again. No one can ever use that against me, right? So those things, body image, everything can be part of that perfectionism thought. because we
So,
don't have rejection.
know when mine came in? This is, and I didn't even think about this, and my light just turned off. Nice. And we're
I can
talking about perfectionism.
say,
Um, when my when my whole identity changed, my dad had a restaurant, right? And my sisters were waitresses, and I was just this little 8-year-old running around. And I was going through an awkward stage. Everybody goes through an awkward stage, right? I had glasses and I had curly hair like I do, and I now own my curls, but back then I hated them. And we had a waitress that was hilarious. I absolutely loved her. And one day she was talking about how beautiful my sisters were. And I'm just carefree, not thinking about anything. And she looks over at me and she says, "Don't worry, honey. Someday you'll be a beautiful swan too." Well, I had never heard the story of the ugly duckling. So the next year, conveniently, right, we're in library at school, and they share the story of the ugly duckling, and all of a sudden it clicks. I was like, oh my gosh, she was calling me an ugly duckling because she said someday I would be a beautiful swan. Well, then I took this book home. And of course, you know, as a kid, you internalize this stuff and you don't have the ability to think through things like you do as an adult. So I'm looking at this book and I'm taking it literal that this is how my nose looks.
oh my gosh.
And so I went through a very insecure stage of my life. I'm talking many years where I would talk to people and I would cover my face because I thought that I looked like that ugly duckling. And
Wow. Boy, that's the
I
enemy coming in, right?
absolutely. And then I stepped into this whole perfectionism thing as I got older. Then I was trying to like take makeup and try to figure out how to thin my nose out. And it was a whole thing of just looking good enough. So
Wow.
please people. Isn't that
It's
crazy?
crazy, yeah. And those things follow us for a lifetime if
Oh,
God doesn't God doesn't intervene and like identify. God's so faithful in identifying lies. We have
yeah.
to,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we'll get into that, but it's really important to realize where those lies are.
I just figured out that I can plug this light in. So hang
Oh,
on just a
yeah, yeah.
because then it'll stay on. So sorry about this, guys. We do not have to be perfect.
Thank goodness.
This is just a setup to show
Oh, there's your pretty face, all brightened up.
you this is what I
Oh,
need to.
goes
Oh,
down
there,
there. Oh,
uh,
oh, there you go.
there we go. Is that better?
Oh, that's way better.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, just stay
So
close.
another reason why um, we would maybe move into perfectionism is the all or nothing thinking.
Mm,
So perfectionists often believe that they're worthless if their accomplishments are not perfect.
mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that? All or nothing?
It's so funny. I've said that phrase so many times in my life. You know, I'm kind of an all or nothing person. Well, what that really means is, you know, I used to, like, I wanted this to be, you know, my weight to be right, this to be right, my house to be right, on and on and on. And I would always make a list all the time. Like, I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to do this every day. And when you try to do it all at once, there's no way. There's no way you can keep it up. Again, it's this perfectionism that runs in the back of our mind that, you know, we have to do it like this. And then when we can't, what do?
Then we
Nothing.
put ourselves up.
Frozen, we're stuck, and we achieve nothing. That's why I've just gotten to the point where it's like, do the first thing, do one thing, and then move on.
Yeah.
It's like the toddler looking at his 10-year-old brother that's running across, you know, and going, I want to run across the room. Well, he hasn't learned how to walk around the coffee table yet. Once he masters that one thing, the first thing, first steps, then he moves on. And before you know it, he takes a step on his own. It's all good stuff, but it's all necessary. And my personality is I want to do it all at once. I'm getting way better. And guess what's happening? I'm slowing down. I'm taking first things first. And I'm actually moving
Yeah.
forward. And I'm achieving things. And I'm feeling unstuck. And I'm okay with not knowing. Like when we started doing these, obviously we still don't have it down. But when we started doing this, we didn't know how. We just knew that we were supposed to. So we just moved forward very awkwardly. And I'm sure as time goes on, we'll not just be walking around the coffee table. We'll be running across the room someday,
We sure
right? And
hope so.
we hope so.
We
So,
sure hope so.
yeah. So
Uh,
all or nothing thing is a big setup for not being able to move forward, because it's like starting the diet on Monday, every Monday. And you fail on Tuesday, so you wait until Monday to start again instead of just picking up the pieces and moving forward, right?
well, and going back to what our friend said, when our friend commented and said, do you think some people use it to control the next person if they operate that way? So we'll go back to the all or nothing on that,
Yeah.
because absolutely, if a perfectionist believes that they are imperfect, if they get things wrong,
Mm-hmm.
they will see everybody else as imperfect if they get things wrong too.
Right.
It's like
Right.
it's like that pointing one finger and three pointing back at
Well,
you.
yeah, and I think it gives them relief, because if you're always trying to attain perfection, it gives you relief to point out where everybody else is screwing up, maybe. You know what I mean? You're like, and then you become someone that you don't want to be around and people don't want to be around you, right?
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for it failure. And that's what the enemy tries to do in our life, right? Okay, this is an aha moment for me. There's really one perfect person, and that is God himself. Are we just wanting to be our own gods by being perfect ourselves?
Oh.
Are we like saying, you know what, I can do what you do. I can be perfect, and I will show you. It is again a counterfeit.
Yeah, it sure is.
Rather than walking in excellence.
So another reason why a person would operate in perfectionism could be that they feel like, because of their own insecurities, that they have to have rigid roles.
Mm-hmm.
They have to follow rigid rules in order to be accomplishing. And they will rarely listen to what they really feel like doing. It's like Paul wrote in Galatians 5, you have to live by the Spirit and do not be burdened by a yoke of slavery. So people who think that they have to do to be, and that'll be another topic that we cover at some point.
Right.
But people who feel like everything's got to be about rigid rules, that for their day to be perfect, is actually yoked to slavery.
It's
Because
the truth.
there's only one person that's perfect. It's unattainable by us. We're human, which is why we need him.
Right. Right. And yeah, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about this very thing, and there's a lot of rigidity in their life because it's just the way they were raised. And I said, but don't you want to be carefree? And they said the first thing that popped up in my mind when you said carefree is irresponsible. So
Oh,
that really is, and God is faithful in allowing us to see. He puts his finger on things. That's a lie that we believe. Just like the same lie I believed, that I had to be a certain size. Nothing could hang over my pants anywhere. Nothing, everything had to be perfect. That way nobody could, say anything to me. But we believe, that person believed to be carefree was irresponsible. They did not want to be irresponsible, because that would be one of the worst things that they could ever be, is irresponsible. Now think about what carefree is. Free of care. What are we supposed to be? free of care. We're not supposed to worry. We're supposed to have complete and total faith in a holy and perfect God. And there was a time in my life where I was racked with worry. I
Mm.
worried about everything. If something would happen and I'd be like, oh my gosh, and my mind would be like, okay, so what do I do? That doesn't work, what do I do? And my mind would constantly be overwhelmed by this. And a person that I was very close to said, why do you worry about everything? And I immediately said, somebody's got to worry about it. I thought they were irresponsible. And, and to think about that, I can't even work up a worry anymore. Now I might be concerned sometimes, so I take it to prayer, but then it's like, I don't even try to figure it out. I take it to prayer and say, Lord, you need to help me. You need to figure this out, right? So worry has left me, and it has left me full of joy even when I'm not sure what's going on. It's just this, because his ways, I know he's able. His ways are higher than my ways. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. I don't need to figure it all out, right? I just need to do what he asked me to do. Carefree.
Good, Barb.
So,
It's so good. Perfectionists feel like they're never good enough.
mm-hmm.
They tend to see others that way too.
Mm-hmm.
They expect us to have few errors. They expect us to have little emotional stress, and they expect us to have the highest self-confidence that you can have.
Mm-hmm.
And it borderlines with pride. At the same time, perfectionists will view their own efforts as unending and forever inadequate.
That's sad.
And 2 Corinthians 3:5-6 says, not that we are adequate to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God, who makes us adequate, competent as servants of the new covenant, not of the letter, but by the Spirit.
Mm.
I mean, this is why Jesus went to the cross.
Yeah.
Perfect. He went to the cross perfect. He did nothing wrong. And he took all of that upon himself so that in him we could be made perfect. But we can't do it apart from him. And it's pride to think that we can.
Exactly.
And honestly, it's that it just shows me that we don't really truly know him in that area. And we are learning who he is every day.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning who he is. There are so many wonderful things about him, and we are going to be working until eternity to discover who he is.
Right.
Performance and being your authentic self. I wrote down here, perfectionism is a root issue.
Yeah.
It's often tied to shame and abandonment. If you think that you have to be perfect, it's often tied to shame and abandonment. It has to be just right, but it's never enough.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so that puts me in your heart that you feel like you have to be just right, but you're never enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and going to the Lord and knowing who He is and knowing that He is perfect and that we can rest in that we can when when we realize what He created us to be and who He created us to be. I mean, it takes a lifetime to learn that, but as you begin to allow those things to be stripped from you, the whole performance and believing that you could be perfect, but you begin to see who God created you to be, how unique, right? And we're always talking about identity, and it's so hard to wrap your mind around that. But when you do, when you begin to realize it's okay. I don't have to be good at everything. I'm not a great cook. I can do it if I have to. I can make a couple good recipes. I'm fine with that. I mean, if I wanted to concentrate on it, I guess I could. I just don't have the desire because it's God hadn't placed it in me to have a strong desire for that. I
Mm.
love people that can cook. I love to eat the food. Like, can I design? Yes. And it's just one of those things that God has planted in me. So then it's up to me to be excellent at that, to learn to walk around the table, to begin to run, and all these, and people that are cooks, they, do a great job. You become excellent. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm okay with not having all these things. And then I can appreciate other people that do. And then I also appreciate myself. This is enjoying your authentic you. Okay. I've come to realize I don't have to be a certain weight to be loved. Have you ever had a friend that maybe, or met a person that by the world standards may not be highly attractive, doesn't have all the features that, the world says we should have, and maybe, whatever. But they are really comfortable in their skin and they are full of joy and they're just full of life. And you're like, I love them because they help us realize they're okay with who they are and it's okay for us to be who we are. That's why the perfectionist does the opposite. The perfectionist is never okay with themselves because they can't be perfect, they can't be God. So they're always making us feel like we should be perfect, right? So it's like all the opposite. So being your authentic self is so relaxing. It is so wonderful. It is so full of care. It's carefree, right? Because I don't have to think twice. And to find a friend like Ange, and we talked about friendship, finding a friend who just knows you, loves you for all your quirkiness, for all your differences. Like Ange loves everything sparkly and glittery. I'm kind of the opposite, but I just love it that I love that about her. I think that's so cool. And I almost wish I could do that, but then I'm like, nah, it's not my thing. Whatever. But I appreciate how different she is in that. And when you can find people that love who you are authentically, I mean, I think anybody will love people who are authentic and are good people. I just believe that because I've met people I don't have a ton in common with, but I'm like, they're so amazing. I want to get to know them because they're comfortable. I guess they give me permission to be comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to live. And God wants us to be comfortable with who He made us because He is quite the designer. I mean, the way He puts us together, if we'd really embrace it and stop trying to be, if I'd like say, I want to be like Ange, she'd be like, well, you're going to have a rough time because you're not like Ange. I didn't put all those things that I put in Ange in you, but there's things I put in you. I always tell people, it's like trying to make, admiring Ange because she was built to make a chocolate cake, right? And I'm built to, make lasagna as a, you know what I mean? But I'm looking at her and going, I wish I had some of those ingredients. Well, I don't need them for my lasagna. Is this making any sense?
Absolutely.
But it's so weird. Or Ange going, gosh, I wish I had some garlic for my chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to make the lasagna. You make the chocolate cake, Ange, right? These are crazy examples, but
No, it's not. It's perfect. I mean, you know, um, when we were talking today, I was thinking about, like some of the people that I mentor that have found themselves in perfectionism. And it's interesting because there's many of them that they'll tell you that their home life was not good,
mm,
that mom and dad fought and there was always unrest, and they developed, because the enemy's an opportunist, right?
mm-hmm,
Because when we're children, we're not mature enough to understand and reason through things like we are as an adult. And so these adults will say that as a child, they thought that if they were perfect, if they were compliant, if they followed all the rules, if they were basically seen but not heard, and they would just mind their own business, that everything would be peaceful in their home. when they followed all the rules and checked all their boxes, and there was still unrest and still heartache in the home, they thought immediately, they internalized it, and they thought it was still on them, that they weren't perfect enough, that they still should have done more, and then maybe this wouldn't have happened. And then kids will often blame themselves when parents get divorced too.
Right. Yeah, and it
So
carries on into adulthood.
absolutely. And so
Who tells us how to do that, Ange? No one. I mean, we just grow up and we don't know why we are. Most of us don't even identify that we are performers, you know? And
no,
now that, I mean, it still rises up in me. If somebody's not happy, I find myself wanting to run and fix it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I don't have to explain myself. It's not necessary
well,
in the situation to explain myself, right?
I mean, think about it. Perfectionism is how they coped.
Right.
It became a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And hard habits are hard to break.
Right. Right.
So
And
it really is about,
it takes our joy.
it's about finding our identity.
Yeah, it is.
And when you feel unloved and you feel condemned and you're afraid of people seeing like your imperfections, because none of us are perfect, right? Then when you think it takes that perfection to be accepted, you're always going to fall short. Always.
Yeah.
And you'll end up abandoning yourself if you're not perfect.
Right. Right.
We don't know how to love ourselves
Right.
perfectly. And you will end up abandoning yourself, abandoning self-care, abandoning how you eat well, abandoning exercise. There's so many things that you will self-sabotage and abandon yourself if you feel like you're not perfect.
Right. It's all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And once you figure out after
Yeah.
striving for years and being frustrated that you can't do it all, you can't be that perfect, you cannot be God, right? How many of us, that's what's man's problem is, they want to be their own God, right? And so yeah, you'll either stay stuck or just wither. It's terrible.
I saw a story today when my mom started struggling with her memory, and we moved her into our house. It's been a couple years ago now. She lived with us for about 14 months. But I set up an unrealistic expectation. I brought her into our home, and I didn't even realize it, but I had basically made an oath to myself that I was going to keep her till her last breath.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it got to be too hard and too difficult. And my husband made the decision for me. Angela, you need to be a daughter. You're not a caretaker. This is too much for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the transition was amazing. I mean, the way it all worked out for her to go to assisted living, she absolutely loves it there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I felt like a failure. And my son, 23-year-old son, who has the wisdom of Abraham, he was home this one particular weekend, and I was still really down and out about having to move her. And he came upstairs, and he's in the kitchen, and he's just watching me, like taking it all in, right? He's very observant. And finally he said, "You feel like a failure, don't you, Mom? You feel like a failure that you had to send grandma off for care. You feel like a failure." And I'm like, yeah, it's exactly how I feel. And he goes, good. And he turns around and he goes downstairs, and I'm left like my mouth's hanging open. I'm like, good.
What?
Like, what? And so I go to the top of the steps and I yell down the stairs after him, and I go, what do you mean good? What do you mean it's good that I feel like a failure? And he turns around and he looks at me, and I promise you, it was like God himself speaking to me from his throne. It was such a God word. He looked at me and he said, I'm glad you feel like a failure, Mom. because then you can lean on the one who never fails.
Mm-hmm. So true. That is so good. That is so good.
And do you want to know what happened? All that failure, all that false expectation, all of that performance, all of those unfulfilled promises that I made myself that were,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to fulfill them. It fell off of me in that moment. And that's a word for anybody listening. I just want to say to you, if you feel like a failure, good, because then you can lean on the one that never fails.
So good. So good.
And when you lean on the one that never fails, you realize that it's okay to fail.
Yeah. Because he's God and we're not.
Yeah.
I was telling Ange today, there's been at least 3 major situations. Well, there's been more, but 4 pivotal, huge things in my life that I was brought to the place that there was nothing I could do to fix it. There was no one I could ask to fix it. There was no power to fix it, to make everything okay. And I had to come to the point where and this has happened not too long ago, that I just came to that same point of realizing without God, this is completely hopeless. So, God, it's all yours, like all of it. Because so many times, I want to help him.
Mm-hmm.
I got some ideas, God. Do you just, if you just go ahead and answer these prayers? And he's like, and he's spoken this to me before, very kind, but still stern. You need to get out of my way. I don't need your help. I, you know, I know you're trying to help, but you're kind of messing things up. You know what I mean? Just let me be God. And when I'm in this position, where the only hope is him, and I just get my white flag out and I start doing this, and I'm like, I got nothing. I got nothing. You're going to have to take it all because I can't do anything. Complete peace comes over me. And he begins to do what only God can do. And that's when you see how he I just see him as putting these intricate puzzles together, and this piece and that piece. And all of a sudden you begin to see, the picture, and you're like, how on earth did you bring this all together, come to pass, put this person in my life, this situation, that? And I'm just sitting there going, it's yours. And he's just fixing it all, right? That's when you realize that all your striving and, working towards perfectionism and doing it all, and it's worth a hill of beans. Like, he's God, like
Mm-hmm.
the almighty God. He's got it all. That's when you see him for who he is. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can rest in just being who he created you to be, with all your little quirks and goofiness. It's all for a reason. It all fits together in this beautiful little puzzle, and the puzzle happens to be us. We're this beautiful little masterpiece that he creates, and we're so busy not embracing who he made us. That's when we become beautiful. Life by design. That's where beauty happens.
Yeah.
Design,
It,
right? He's
it
given us order.
it makes me think of too, when you talk about puzzle, it makes me think of those tapestries,
Mm-hmm.
tapestries. It's like they are so intricately woven, all the beautiful threads that are just perfect. And then you flip over this masterpiece and it's nothing but just millions of little knots. And
Messy.
and messy. It's messy. And I've discovered that a lot of times we have space and patience for messy,
Mm-hmm.
but not in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
think we have to have it all together. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. If I ever get to a place where I'm perfect and I have it all together, then probably I will stop hungering and thirsting for his righteousness. And if I ever get to a place where I stop hungering and thirsting for his righteousness because I'm imperfect, then it's a sad day. It's like the old song that says, I need thee every hour, I need thee.
True. Truth.
So we really just have to give ourselves permission to look at, our own lives and go, why am I fearing imperfection? Do I fear loss? Do I fear that I won't be accepted if I'm imperfect? Do I fear that it means I'm not good enough? Do I fear that, if I'm not all, then I'm nothing? Do I fear disapproval? Do I fear that my worth and value will not be enough if I'm not perfect? I mean, these are all things that we need to ask ourselves. And it comes back down to the first question that we brought up at the beginning, knowing our authentic self. How do we know our authentic self? Well, the only way is to know God, to know who he is, to know our identity in him, to know who we are in him, and knowing what he's placed in us. And the only way that we're going to find that is by reading the word.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way that we know his character and nature.
Right, right. And also, when we step in and we spend intimate time with him and just making a space for him, because you can't have intimacy if you're the only one talking in the relationship, right? You got to ask the other person questions. We have to ask God questions, not why is my life like this questions, but
Yeah.
Lord, what breaks your heart? What am I doing that breaks your heart? What do you want? How can I love you today? How can I, anything we want to ask him, we ask him, and he begins to speak to us. When that relationship is intact, all the other ones begin to fall away as far as needing the approval, needing the acceptance. Yes, it hurts when people reject us. It hurt, we're human beings. It hurts, but it doesn't have to stifle us. It doesn't have to destroy us like it does when we're seeking, perfectionism, and we're performing and we're doing backflips for everybody that comes our way. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. We're completely free.
Yeah.
Free. Care of what man says. Care of what, we're enough. If we're enough for God, we're enough.
And being carefree, like you said, it doesn't mean you're irresponsible.
Oh.
It means that you know who is responsible.
Yes. That's so good. So good. I love that. Yes, because he is more than responsible. And when we give it to him, we are free from the care of caring for everything ourselves. We were not built to do it ourselves. That's why it's so frustrating, right?
That is the truth.
So much freedom. So much freedom. So this is good news, people. You are enough. All your little quirks, all your little silly, like if you have a friend that you can just cut up with, let go and be yourself, that's who you need to be all the time. And if people come alongside of you, people are going to fall in love with you. Because you are fearfully and wonderfully made by an incredible God who knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. You're built and you're good enough. You're more than good enough. You're loved.
I was sharing to the listeners, I was sharing with Barb today a story about my dad. When my dad was in his last few weeks of life, of living, he was really sick. He needed full-time oxygen and just having a hard time breathing. And he was depressed and he was low and just wanted to give up, right? And one day he was standing in the mirror and he was shaving, and he heard the Lord say, "Why are you preparing to die? You should be preparing to live." And this light bulb went off. He comes out of the bathroom. He's all excited. And he says to my mom, he goes, "I just realized something." He said, "I'm on the winning team." He said, "If God chooses to heal me, I live. And if he chooses to take me and not heal me on this earth, I live." He said, "I live. I'm alive either way."
Amen.
Lose. And so that's just such a message for us, even in this journey that we walk out and trying to be perfect. If you fail, you win, because you're going to learn something out of that. Who God is as the one who never fails. And if you succeed, you win. Right. I mean, it's like we can't lose. The word of God is true. It is fulfilled. It is our promise. It is our past, our present, our future, and we already know what the end says. It's we win. Right. And so in this journey, we have to know that when we trust in the one that never fails, no matter what it looks like in our life, when we look and say, what do I need to learn from this? How can I grow from this? Right. We win. Amen.
So good. And we live with joy, and we live with peace, and we live with confidence. And you know what? When we can do that for ourselves, we then can extend it to those around us. And it is the funnest thing in the whole world when you can allow a loving God to love through you. You know, because I can feel his love for people. I mean, it doesn't come from me, but when you're accepting of yourself and he's living in you, when you see others, I see others differently. They're important, they're valuable, they have something inside of them that is so unique, and I want to find out what that is, right? And it's so fun to experience life like that, and to allow him just to live and breathe and give life through us. So that is truly being authentic, love, being able to allow other people to be authentic too, and who they are, and just loving them right where they're at, even in the mess.
I was telling you today, you know, my God-given name is Angela, right? And for years I went by Angie. And when I started going through all my identity stuff, one day the Lord said to me, "I want you to go by your given name." Because my mom prayed about that name. She got it from him. And Angela Joy means angelic delight. And I think it sounds like a strawberry dessert with whipped cream. But the Lord said to me, "I want you to go by that, because that is how I see you. You are my angelic delight. We delight in you." And now that I've embraced how he's made me, and I see the gift in how he's made me, I like me. Do you know how long I have waited to say that? I didn't like me for a long time.
That's so good.
But I like me. I like how he made me.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of a story. Are you done, Ange?
I was just going to say, when we embrace how he made us, we like us, because he's the one that designed us that way. And he like us, it's like blowing a kiss to our creator.
So true.
Because he doesn't make junk.
It's so true.
He wove us together special and specific. And when we like us, we are blessing our creator.
Man. So true. So true. I was telling Anne today that it was probably like 10 years ago. I took this, it was like a life coaching course or something. And this is before I did any video of any kind, and we had to introduce ourselves on to this Facebook group, just our names and where we came from. It took me all day because I was like, bah, bah, bah. I'm like, this is so hard. And then the next thing was we had to give a little bit longer talk, and I literally could not do this. I would say 3 words and then I would start over and blah 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 blah. So finally, I decided, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to do this. I know I'm not going to use this video if I mess up, but I'm going to go all the way through it, and then I'm going to see what I want to use from it, right? Made sense. Well, during the thing, I'm messing up. I'm like, I'm doing all these weird faces and stupid stuff because I'm not going to use it. So I watch it back to get information, take notes, and I'm watching this person that's being her authentic self. And, and this thought came to me, and I thought, I'd be friends with you. And then I thought, I like you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I keep trying to be someone that I'm not? That's when you get really weird when you're trying to, like, look a certain way or not use the faces you normally use when you're talking to people, And that's what it started to give me release, just to be who I am. It is what it is, right?
So awesome.
And it's so much easier just to be who God created us to be instead of fight the process. But that's how you become your authentic self, right, Ange? I know we're getting long here. So,
oh my gosh. Okay, so this takes us to our topic for next week.
Oh.
Do you remember what it was?
Oh gosh. Did I write it down? Oh my gosh, it was good too. Did you not write it down?
We should really have this down. Perfect in this.
Strive, not to strive, but to rest.
Oh.
It was about rest.
Yes. It was striving versus rest, and how that moves us in the spirit. It moves us from glory to glory, and we'll explain what that is. Moving from glory to glory, we'll explain that. So striving versus rest, and how to move in greater heights with the Lord, glory to glory.
Right. Well, and that kind of takes us back to, either the all or nothing. We're not going to try to do all. You know what I mean? We're going to rest in Him, and then you begin to move forward spiritually, right?
Oh yeah,
it's
for sure.
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
Hard to imagine how you can grow spiritually by resting.
Yeah,
and we'll explain all that. It's pretty loaded. So that'll be next Sunday. Let's see, an update on our retreat coming up, April 19th, 20th, 21st. It's in Dover, Ohio. Do we have one spot left?
Yes, we have a couple people looking at it, but if you are that one person, just let us know. We have room for one more to squeak it in. So it's going to be fantastic.
It's $199. But it's a very expensive barn dominium. That $199 pays for your 2-night stay and all your food. We are not in it to get rich, trust me. But yeah, but we girlfriends spending the night together.
Yeah.
We've got food planned. Barb and I are going to teach for the weekend. And if you want to just come for Saturday, you can. Or if you want to drive back and forth and not spend the night there, you can do that.
Yeah, we have plenty of room for that.
Absolutely. It starts Friday at 4 and it ends Sunday at 11. So you can drive back and forth. And also there's a way to, if you want to just come Saturday too. So just reach out to us if you're interested.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you. We're a load of fun because we really like ourselves.
That sounds bad, but
it did sound bad.
You're like,
they would understand.
We're a lot of fun. I know that.
We are a lot of fun because God's made us that way.
Yes, He did. All right, until next week then.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. We will see you next Sunday. I will be in Florida, but I'm going to tune in from somewhere on my vacation. And Angie just got home from Florida, so she'll be in Ohio.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
We're
We'll see you.
excited. Oh, and real quick, we do have our breakfasts that we want to tell you about too. I host the first Saturday of every month, I host a women's breakfast at my house. And the first Monday of every month, Barb hosts a breakfast at her house. So if you are interested in attending one of our breakfasts, you can reach out to us on that
Yeah.
too. So
It's
all right.
April 1st, and yours is what? April 4th or
It's
5th?
Saturday, I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good night.
Good. Yeah.